This was a complete evolution of DreamWorks animation. This does not feel like How to Train Your Dragon or Shrek. This is a complete paradigm shift, and I think what we're used to at DreamWorks, and I love it.
At the Untitled Film Project Podcast, all of us were really geeked up for a long time for the wild robot. So we're going to talk about it today. After a shipwreck, a very intelligent robot called Roz, who is meant for modern society, finds herself stranded on an uninhabited island filled with animals and looking for purpose.
Sometimes, to survive, we must become more than we were programmed to be.
We'll give you our takes on the wild robot, and we'll ask the big question.
That big question is, name an animated film that you just have a deep emotional connection to. Animation has grown so much and evolved so much in the past 3 decades to really do true storytelling and be a complete art form. So I know that we have emotional connections now to animated films.
I thoroughly enjoyed, I think the audience did with me. This movie did not go to a lot of the cliches I thought it would go to. I thought the humor had just a little bit of an edge to it that made me not expect what was coming and made those moments funnier. And I think all in all, I really thought this could have been a boring, cliched movie. For the most part, it totally entertained me.
Guys, what have we learned from the wild robot?
I'll talk a lot more about what I learned.
You want to get into themes and stuff? Because I'm going to go like English Lit 200 level.
All right, I'll just give you a spoiler.
So I'm not going to.
What we've learned from the wild robot is that everything good in this world happens because of sea otters. That's what we've learned.
Oh.
The sea otters turned on Roz, and we got this whole movie because of them.
Oh, well, welcome to taking the right pill and now discovering it's all about the sea otters.
It is all about the sea otters. That's
They have pockets.
That's the lesson.
That makes them one of the most amazing animals ever.
This is true. That's my initial take. Bradford, sea otters.
Okay.
I have a lot more to discuss.
I love it.
Sea otters.
If you've been listening for a while, you know that this is one of the movies I was looking forward to most for the rest of the year, back when we discussed this a few months ago.
Yeah.
And it did not disappoint. This is one of my favorite movies of 2024. It has such a deep emotional connection. While, yes, there's plenty of great humor, which the humor, what is great about it is that edge, that edginess to it of animal humor, where they're not trying to scoot by what really happens in the animal world about getting eaten or dying or,
brutality,
infant mortality rate when it comes to certain things. Like, there's so much adult humor in there that won't traumatize a child, which I think is perfect for something to be able to take your family to. Aside from the humor, there's just so much heart in this movie that even though I do not have children, I can connect with this in terms of looking at the description of a community and how important it is to support each other, to do good, to support one's dreams, to try to find a way to support success, to go against the grain in so many different ways, to be happy. I mean, there's so many different themes we could look for in this movie, and that's why there was plenty of hype, I think, just from the internal film community about this. There wasn't as much necessarily marketing trying to hype it up like you saw with Migration last holiday season, which was fine. Nothing special, but it was fine. This one is great art. This one is so beautifully animated, a wonderful film score, so many great things about it. And then you start looking at the mastermind behind this, Chris Sanders, and the projects he's been a part of are movies that have heart. I mean,
start rattling those off for anybody who's not familiar.
How to Train Your Dragon, Lilo and Stitch. He was a writer as well with Lion King. I mean, you go that far back.
It's a great resume.
Right. Great resume. He's also the voice of Stitch as well. So that's pretty cool. But the movie has so much heart, and animated movies have gone so far in making you emotionally connect with it that you emotionally connect with the characters, with a robot, with a goose. I mean, in the things they have to face as well by being in the wild, and just in so many different scenes, the sense of community that is developed in an animated film shows how it is an art form that has evolved so much that it truly is, it's art. It's not just an animated movie, because before, animated movies tend to be targeted towards children, or a family movie, or it's just that genre that you would just scoot aside and you couldn't have art with it. It was an animated film. Now, animation is a genre in its own, but so many times it can be considered great art and great film that you see it being nominated for things that are not just greatest animated movie, but best film. And this is one of those types of movies that can garner that type of discussion because of the way that it's written, because it's not just for families, it's for everyone. There's so many great messages in this film that I truly deeply connected with. And I know this is an initial take, but my initial take is how good this movie is and why it deserves to be talked about and deserves to be seen by so many people, because you will gain a message from this that should hopefully make your life better and help you make people around you make their lives better as well.
Guys, I only have one problem with this movie. That's how great it is, okay? And it's not a big one per se, but as an audience member, I felt it, and therefore I wanted to bring it up with you guys, and of course you at home. I felt like this movie could have ended 4 different times. I felt like there was when he goes off, right, when he actually migrates, and right, I knew it wasn't the end of the movie because it was too short, but I figured, okay, now we're going to get Roz's conclusion. She's kind of, what is she like without a purpose? That kind of thing, right?
The empty nester.
That's what I thought it would be. Literally. That's what I thought it would be. So, and then all of a sudden, they show kind of that struggle a little bit, and then they show all of a sudden the migration at the plant with the robots, and then they're under attack because they're attacking. And I was like, okay, all right, great. And then they showed that they came back, and that the Little Beak, what's his name? I call him
Bright Bill.
Thank you, Bright Bill. He's like, where's Roz at? And then they finally reunited, and okay, that's going to be the end. Nope, that's not the end either. There's as an audience member,
there's a fire.
There's a rhythm to movie making and taking in a piece of art like this, and I felt like they really stretched that, which is weird because I didn't feel like it was long, other than the fact that I was reminded, this is going to be. These are all subconscious thoughts, by the way. Like, subconsciously, I'm like, oh, this is it. This is going to be the end of the movie. And then it's not. Well, then this is going to be it. And then it's not. Oh, well, then this is definitely going to be it. And it is not. That's my only complaint with The Wild Robot. Everything else was, like, not only just good, it was excellent. It was great, great, great cinema.
I think those are valid. I truly also think, like, hey, pick one of those climaxes and do it really well. That's one of the few things I think probably took it down a little bit for me, because, you could have ended on this great note, but then you introduced another thing and another thing and another thing.
It's like they just needed a little bit of a villain of sorts to overcome that.
Sure.
And even though it's introduced very late, it's just that one extra hurdle they had to get over. So I can understand your point. I don't want to disagree necessarily, but I understand your point where you're coming from, because it felt like they were just trying to add another little hurdle of coming together is what they were trying to accomplish.
Sure.
With that. Yeah,
yes.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, the cohesive theme of this, and this is where we can get into the great ideas that come out of this movie, is that for every one of these challenges that come along, from even at the very beginning when, Roz has got to be a parent, like, at the drop of a hat because she caused it. She killed his parents. So I think there are so many cool things in this movie. Each one of those challenges has to forces all of the characters, whether it be a robot for the modern day society or nature, to go outside its comfort zone and do something that is not necessarily something it was programmed to do in their DNA or by, an algorithm, to survive this and get something done and to have a better society for all and not just for themselves.
And how the animals learn from a robot. Like, that's what's curious to me. Just going back to, I was going to be curious, and obviously they did it in a great way of, well, how are we going to get talking animals? What is the take? Well, I mean, a robot can do that, but it has to study. So I love that quick progression of how she's learning and studying the animals, not just one of those flip of a switch type of things, but as an AI, she had to learn based on mannerisms and sounds and things like that to be able to understand the animals. I loved that because there's so many movies that'll just like flip a switch. I mean, you think C-3PO can just understand language because he's programmed to, right? Roz did not, but she was programmed to be able to learn on how to understand language. I thought that was brilliant. A brilliant take on how to learn in the study.
It was a great device.
So you take that and how she can learn, and that there's a built-in algorithm on how other things can happen. Where there's that glitch of being able to, just like in Free Guy.
Yes.
Randomly, a video game movie, right? But in Free Guy, how all of a sudden, oh, wow, it can learn. It can learn emotion, can learn this. Roz doesn't necessarily learn all of that, but is able to learn on how to be a parent, how to take care, understand friendship and love, and so many different things. That's why I love the movie, because I just loved how a robot could do that and learn to be a parent, even though there's these deeper issues that you get in a Bambi or a Dumbo where parents die and you have to address these types of things, or Land Before Time, all these emotionally charged movies, right, with parental death that takes place.
It's it's huge.
It's
huge.
Mean,
it's in so many movies already this year.
Absolutely. So all those different types of reasons, I can kind of understand why it can feel a little bit. Thankfully for me, it didn't feel long. It's just I do understand. Yeah, they probably could have ended it here, but then there's that whole they have to overcome something major happening like the big fire and then get together again. So, anyways, I'm rambling, but yeah, I loved it.
I do want to circle back to the animation style, which I thought was just chef's kiss for a blend of almost photorealistic at times. And since this came from a book, what looked like illustration.
Yes.
And the blending of those two was just done so well that this is just so enjoyable to look at. And it's not one that we've seen already.
Right. I think there's inspiration from Sony with what we saw with Spider-Verse.
Yep.
Not copycatting, because but definitely inspiration.
One unlocked the other.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Of drawing,
Great.
right? Just like feels like a comic book, because the way they did the animation styling in Spider-Verse, you feel that here with the drawing of illustrations, that we're seeing the evolution of animation, that it's not all like bubbly pop, things like that, or Pixar has different takes on what they do. Disney animation has different takes. This was a complete evolution of DreamWorks animation. This does not feel like How to Train Your Dragon or Shrek. This is a complete paradigm shift. And I think what we're used to at DreamWorks, and I love it so much.
Yeah, it was really cool. I had a lot of echoes of, now I'm spacing on it, The Iron Giant.
Oh, yes.
Of a robot trying to learn its purpose. In that case, it was a war machine. But the beauty of that animation for the time that it came out, which was in the 90s, I believe, and it looked illustrated, but yet it had all the advantages of modern CGI starting to hit, the movie making process.
I want to bring up voice acting.
Okay.
This is something, I harp on. We've all talked about this, right? To me, there was only one voice in here that I was like, I know who that is, and it's okay. Ving Rhames.
Yep.
We knew.
That's Thunderbolt.
4 lines.
We knew Ving Rhames. We knew that voice. But everyone else, you look at the cast, I could not easily just to disseminate, well, that's obviously this person, it's obviously this person. I feel like Lupita Nyong'o, Pedro Pascal, Bill Nye,
Catherine O'Hara.
Yeah.
Mark Hamill, because Mark Hamill is fantastic.
He's a voice actor.
All of those people did an incredible job of developing their own characters and not just using their own voice.
Yes, which to me is, I think, where the development and maturity of DreamWorks, SKG, I'm going through the whole history there, where they relied solely on totally recognizable voices, being themselves, and then just kind of shoehorned them into characters early on, whereas this is the opposite.
Yes.
Like, they found people that blended in and created a character you've never seen before, and you weren't taken out of it because, I know that guy. I know that person.
Absolutely. I mean, just like, have you all seen Josh Gad, the interviews now, where he regrets using his own voice for Olaf?
Yes.
Because now when he just talks, people are like, Olaf! He's like, oh no. He's like, I should have developed a character for this. And he's gotten better, obviously, now. So he does plenty of voice acting. Right. But he regrets using his own voice because it's so much associated with Olaf. So there was great voice acting, because they're not marketing this movie based on the voices. They're in there. They're in the premieres. They're in photos, things like that. But it's not featuring these actors.
To me, that's a crutch.
and it's a testament to how much this movie was focused on building characters and building a great story, is that they're not leaning on the names. Because you could lean on Pedro Pascal. You could lean on Catherine O'Hara. Now. You could lean on Lupita Nyong'o.
These people are on fire.
Yeah,
you
Mark
could
Hamill.
Use their stardom.
So many of them. Stephanie Sue, they're so well known now in Hollywood. You could market with that, but they've chosen not to. And I appreciate that about you.
Which makes me wonder why they went with that. Why spend the big budget money to go after those names when they could have just done Nyong'o, for example, as the lead, and then had actual voice actors like Tara Strong and Greg Sipes and all the perennial voice actors do the actual voices and save some money.
That is a good question, but I think it's a confidence in the script.
Oh no, I'm sure that's the answer.
That they were willing to take the chance to not use, the cheap, easy way to maybe try to get attention and just let the movie speak for itself. Thank you. I appreciate that. To the numbers on The Wild Robot. Let's start with Jeremy Gober.
All right, this is a lonely movie, which by default means that you are feeling tons of different emotions in this film, which in turn makes it by default one of the best movies of 2024, maybe of a generation. Because what do we want from movies, right? Or from art, actually? We want it to elicit an emotional response of some kind. Usually it's fear, or it's a horror movie, or it's adrenaline if it's action, or if it's comedy, you want funny, whatever. This has layering of emotions on top of the fact that it is funnier than I thought it was going to be.
No, like a parfait.
Kind of, except that's food mixed together,
or an onion,
which I don't eat. So it's excellent because it makes you feel lonely. It makes you sympathetic. It makes you empathetic. It's also funnier than I thought it was going to be. There's a lot of action in here. It's beautiful and gorgeous to look at. But my real takeaway here is that my wife was at the screener, and she's a teacher, elementary school teacher, so she's very familiar with the book. She's been excited about this from the moment they announced it. And on the way home, she goes, I can't believe I'm going to say this. I think it's better than the book, which is a insanely rare comment to make about films.
High praise.
Yeah. So this is a perfect family movie, as Jim mentioned earlier. Everybody at every age group of every demographic will connect with this film in some way, some alike, some different, which I think is, again, goes back to the fact that it's multi-layered emotionally. It will be nominated for Best Picture. I give it a 9.0. The only other movie I've given a 9, as high as a 9 this year, is Bob Marley, One Love, and this is better than that. But we don't do like 0.1, 0.2 on this show.
Sure.
So therefore, 9.0. So Wild Robot, 9.0 for me.
All right. Justin Bradford, what do you think?
So it made me cry.
Well, yeah.
I'm just saying, that's emotional connection. That's what you're going for in the story. Is you made a childless millennial cry. So I don't have that connection. So I can only imagine how parents can relate. Mm-hmm. Even more so,
especially
right?
moms.
Especially moms, especially if you have kids that have grown and have left as well, too. I mean, there's so many different storylines throughout this and themes throughout this that people can connect to with different moments of their lives. And that's what I love. That's great. The part that touched me a lot was the community aspect of this. Of yes, we are animals, we have predators, we have prey, we have so many of these different types of things. But right now, we're not going to eat each other. We have to survive. Right. But it was how they brought a sense of community, and it didn't seem ridiculous. I mean, some of these movies where you have talking animals, whether it's animation or not, when you have talking animals, you can roll your eyes at these moments. So this would never happen. But because they found a way to make these animals communicate with each other and have an understanding of their community on their island, that hits so much. And so much negative that we see in the world today. This is one of those things where we see a true sense of community, whether it's a community responding to a natural disaster, a community responding to some heinous crime that has happened in their area, a community responding to somebody that's been lost, or community responding to death. It brings a sense of community, and that's what's important in film to see that, whether it's animated or not. Again, it shows the beauty of community and supporting one another and each other, about coming together for one main goal. And for this, it was survival. But it was more than just that, because it showed that they have a great sense of community. They understand the natural order of things, because you have to. That's what makes the ecosystem happen. It's a natural order. But for some brief moments in time, you can suspend that in order to have your full community to survive. Sometimes, even if you disagree, you have to come together. That's the movie does such a great thing about, aside from the whole, hey, I need to have my son be able to migrate so he can survive as well, too. There's a whole community aspect of this film. There's so much beauty throughout this, not just in the animation, but in the storytelling and how the music supports the storytelling. Beautiful voice acting, just a beautiful script overall, too, and just so many positive notes that you can take and walk out of the theater with this, that you just have to see it. You have to see The Wild Robot. I cannot continue to say that enough, is that you have to experience this movie, because if you want just to feel good and to laugh, plenty of
lots of it,
laugh out loud moments that almost make you go, oh, they did that? That's great. The edginess that Jim talked about before in the humor is that it's edgy, but it's understood because they're animals. There's nothing dark about it. They're an animal.
Oh, it's dark.
In terms of dark,
Mommy, I made it. Oh, yay.
Dark,
hilarious.
It's right. It's hilarious, but it's not dark like a Joker dark.
Yeah, right.
No, well, sure.
Right. And that's a great contrast.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's super funny in a way that you just understand why it's funny as well, too, because it's the animal world. So again, I cannot stress enough how good and beautiful film this is. I have to give it a 9.5.
Very high. Wow. A rare set of scores. I really liked this movie quite a bit. I don't know if I liked it as much as you guys. I think it would take a deep cynic to, say this is a sappy movie. Animals would never do that. And there's a little tiny piece of me that I had to suppress, because this movie did allow me to exhale. The way the world is going right now, and there's just so much tension, and everybody is clenched, and this movie does give you a chance to kind of decompress, see the good in people. I do love that. I don't think that's sappy. I think it's a necessary balance. I think we need that as human beings. I think it was beautiful. I really enjoyed the voice acting. My problem is probably with the final third of this movie, which was, you could say there was 4 final thirds of this movie. Gover put it very well. I will not reiterate those things, but I will say those are some of the stronger things that reduced my score. And I'm giving it a 7.5, but I loved it. It's time for the big question on the Untitled Film Project Podcast. This is where we give you the answer to the questions, but you know what? They're not the right answers. The right answers are whatever you think they are. So please tell us. Tell everybody what the big question is for those who just tuned in.
All right. Name an animated film that you have a deep emotional connection to. And this could be something from childhood, adult life, anything that just triggers a deep emotional response in you, but it's animated.
Well, in keeping with the theme of The Wild Robot, which is, one of the themes, we're raising a child, if you have raised children and you've taken them to animated movies, there's going to be 1 or 2 that just kind of strike you. And I'm not going to tell you this is a great movie, but this is a movie that I felt deeply emotional about in the moment. It was a movie that I took my, very young girl to go see, because what little girl doesn't love horses. So I'm going to talk about Spirit Stallion of the Cimarron in 2002. She was totally into horses. The soundtrack is a little corny. It's all Bryan Adams syrup. Okay, it's syrup Bryan Adams. Straight cane sugar Bryan Adams, but it works in this movie. And there's a little bit of of a lesson in there, of a historical lesson, and that wasn't as strong as it was just enjoying this movie about these wild horses, and how they get hauled into kind of the service of others, and how they need to be free. It was just one of those things that just struck just right for my daughter and for me. That's my answer.
I think that's great. That's what I was going for. Okay, so for me, there are so many different movies you could go with. I mean, especially as a millennial, I'm the only millennial here, and we have older Gen X, younger Gen X. I'm setting this up for a reason, right? There was a span of time in the 80s and 90s that were just like pounding you with emotional animated film after emotional animated film. Like, we have trauma.
Yeah.
Millennials have so much trauma.
Been through a lot.
Whether it's world events or things like that, and every generation has that. I'm not discrediting anything.
But you cannot discount
But you
the things that millennials have gone through.
And I'm an older millennial, so I can only imagine people that are 5 or 6 years younger than me, that it was even more just their childhood straight up, just blasting with trauma. So, I mean, you have things like, the Fox and the Hound. You have The Land Before Time. You obviously Toy Story. There's Toy Story 3, which I think is one of the most traumatic, emotional animated films, right?
Yep.
So I think this is going to come off maybe a surprise to some. If you know me, it won't be as much of a surprise because it's more recent of a movie. But if I want to just feel an emotional connection to an animated film, and it's typically when I'm flying for some reason, I just feel like I just want to get within my feels. I'm watching Coco.
Okay. Yeah.
For some reason, and I think it's the familial connection, the music, the emotional stress and trauma that Miguel is working through with his family and everything. I just have a deep emotional connection to the movie Coco. It's so beautiful. It's so well done. It makes me feel every time I watch it. And that's what I'm going for sometimes. Sometimes you choose when you just want to feel, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you just want dead brain.
Right.
And, and you don't want to feel, I want something on. I choose to watch Coco when I want to feel because I know what's going to happen. I'm going to cry every time I watch that movie. I know what's happening, right? And I still cry. Like, I start crying before the moments happen in the movie because I know what's happening. So I can't think of any other movie that does that for me. And that's why that's my answer. And that's not what inspired the question. When I started thinking deep down, there's so many things I could choose from the 80s and 90s, or even today. But Coco just continues to stand for me as the one that I have a true emotional, deep connection with that just hits me every single time.
That's so interesting that you have chosen the one that will make you openly cry while on an airplane when you're kind of on display all the time.
You do you, man.
That's so interesting.
I'll also snack while Gover doesn't on an airplane. I'll hold his hand, though, whenever I need to.
He has before.
Yes.
Gover is very afraid of flying.
I don't like it.
But he'll do it for the right opportunity.
That's right. For the right opportunity. That's right.
Exactly.
Make it worth my while. I'll risk
That's right.
I got ahead of myself. My answer is 1959's The Adventures of Chip and Dale.
Okay.
Never saw that coming.
When I was a kid, we would go down to Video City in Antioch, California, which is pre-Blockbuster and Hollywood Video. And you would rent those huge, they're VHS tapes, but they're on that white packaging that's like 10 times. Okay.
From the vault.
But yeah. And 1959's Adventures of Chip and Dale was one of my first introductions to Disney. I fell in love with the characters of Chip and Dale.
Love them.
And all I ever wanted to do, probably until I was in high school, when I went to Disneyland, because I was from California, was meet and take a picture with Chip and Dale.
Okay, so, I'm glad it wasn't being a Chip and Dale dancer.
No. Oh, no, nobody wants this. So to instill that kind of love, even though I don't think of the movie very often, like I had to actually look it up for this question because I want to make sure I got the right one. But to instill that kind of love of Chip and Dale and have that be my entryway to Disney. And everyone's talking about Mickey and Minnie. And I'm like, yeah, they're great. Where's Chip and Dale? Chip and Dale they're hilarious, they're fun, they're cute. It's awesome. So The Adventures of Chip and Dale.
I love it. Chip and Dale. So Pluto's Christmas Tree is my favorite holiday short featuring Chip and Dale.
Yes.
That's when you fall in love with Chip and Dale, is that animated short
Indeed.
right there. But love your answer, Gover.
What is your answer? I mean, there's the first 20 minutes of Up. We didn't even mention that, probably because it's an obvious one.
Right.
But if it's important to you, let us know about it in the comments. Hit us up on social media, Untitled Film Project Pod, and we would love to share your memories so we can live them with you.
Thank you for listening to the Untitled Film Project Podcast. To support the show, please rate, review, follow, and subscribe. Original music by Jeremy Schwartz. Special thanks to the Music City Film Critics Association. Editing and post-production by Jeremy K. Gover. Voiceover by Chad Bennett.